It's good to be here. And as she has said already, I'm Damilola Kuye. I'm a fourth year computer engineering undergraduate from Unilag, and I'm currently doing my series in Bloomberg. So, why am I here today, or why do we have this meeting? So before now, I would say that before I got my series in Bloomberg, I've been opportune to go through a lot of interviews, not so much, but quite a number of them. And I've seen Shege, yeah, permitting to use the word. I've seen quite, there's been ups and downs and rejections and all of that before I finally got my series in Bloomberg. Now, the interesting part is I applied to Bloomberg last 2 years before this application, the one I got. And I went through the 5 or 4 rounds of interview that took about 2 months. And believe me, I got a rejection. Yeah, I got a rejection. That was like last 2 years, I think December-ish. Then I applied again last year. Then I got it for series. So yeah, we are supposed to be with G, but got rejected too after second interview. Yeah, I mean, I did Goldman Sachs too. Goldman Sachs, interesting. Like after my Bloomberg rejection, I did Goldman Sachs. That was like 2023. Then around April, after going through the interviews again, so I still got rejections. It was a tough moment, and we're just trying to see what we can do to avoid these occurrences for other people that would want to. Oh, yo, Google. Yeah, Google didn't even respond to me at all. Maybe I'm not good enough. I don't know. Maybe I need to work on myself. I don't know, but I don't care for now. So, like I said, like I was saying before, why exactly am I here today? So, I'll basically be talking about coding interviews, why why they do coding interviews, and very very little tips. Not very little tips. I'm not going to be sharing. I don't know everything, so the things I'll be saying would be based on my experience. And why am I saying that? If you check online, you might get better resources, you might get better information, which is beautiful. But I just want to insist on saying the things I can explain or relate to. Do you understand? Can you just give me a reaction if you following me? All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So like I was saying, the question is why coding interviews? Because you need to ask that question. I mean, I have my CV, it's packed already. I've got experience on my CV, I've got my technical skills listed on my CV. Why are you testing me again? Why do you want to know? I mean, is that enough to judge me? But yes, that's not enough. I mean, your CV could be very, very brilliant, very fantastic, but it doesn't depict exactly that you can do what you listed there. So they need to see for themselves that, okay, is it good to work with us? Can we take him in? Is he open to feedback? Is he open to collaboration and stuff like that? So that's just like a basic fundamental reason why companies like this go through this test. Now, I would say some companies don't do DS interviews. Or before I say that, I would just like to be sure that we understand that when we say coding interviews in this context, we're referring to data, structures, and algorithm questions, just to be on the same page with us, because coding interviews could mean anything. But what we are referring to for the purpose of this meeting is a test on your data, structures, and algorithm knowledge. Is that fine? So that I'll be speaking in that context. So why do we go through coding interviews? I think I would just say 30 things that I think is the reason why coding interviews are done by these big tech companies. And number one, I would say, is to examine your communication skill, also to examine your collaboration skill, and finally, problem solving. Now, there could be more, but I can say that these three should summarize the major reason why these big tech companies do these interviews. And most of the time, it's because there are a lot of tech stack in different companies. I mean, one company could be using Python, same company could be using JavaScript, could be using Golang, could be using different cloud tools. So testing you based on a single programming language wouldn't be good enough. So DSA is just like a tech agnostic way of just ensuring that, okay, yeah, this guy is fit for the job, this girl is fit for the job. And so I will just talk a little bit on those 30 things I mentioned earlier. So communication, or no, let me start with problem solving first, which is explanatory. I think they want to see how you can solve a problem given a time constraint, because your day-to-day work in these companies would not involve DSA. So let me establish that you would not have to solve lead code or other things when you get into. I've never done lead code or DSA stuff since I got into Bloomberg since April, but but the skills I gained during my preparation are still playing out. So back to problem solving, they need to see how you can solve a problem, a new problem, a new sort of familiar problem, because you should at least be familiar with basic things about the problem, like data structures and all of that. So they want to see how you can solve this problem in a given time. And also, they want to see how you can communicate, because it's one thing to be able to solve a problem. In the real world, when you get into your work day to day, you don't just solve problems. You have to communicate. You've got clients, you've got stakeholders, you've got your teammates that you have to communicate your ideas to. You have to communicate your thought process to, so you can brainstorm and come together to a better solution at the end of the day. So it's very important that they check how you communicate. And the last one, collaboration. Collaboration, just as the word says, collaboration. In your day to day, also, you would not be solving problems alone. Yeah, I mean, you would in some cases, but you would not in some cases too. You would always have to interact with your teammates, brainstorm, and ask yourself, okay, if we go through this route, what are the trade-offs? If we go through this route, what are the trade-offs? So based on the trade-off in this route and this route, we come to a conclusion that would sort of merge the two solutions or ideas together and give us a balanced result. So I think that's all for that. So communication, problem solving, and what's the last one again? Collaboration. Yeah. So please just give me a reaction if you're still following me, so we can move on to the next thing. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So having established that, now I'll be very honest. DSC might not be the best what's it called check for your skills. That happens a lot of times. But boys and girls, we have no choice here. That is the system, and we have to follow it, because I've seen a lot of takes on LinkedIn where they be like, you know what, don't test me on DSA. I mean, test me on something else, but bro, it's the company policy. It's what they want to do. So you have to just learn it to get into the company. And once you're done learning it and you get your offer, I mean, you're free. Technically, you're free to an extent. So this is what it is. Yeah. So now quickly before I move, it is very important that we understand that being good with coding interviews is not what will get you an interview. Now, what do I mean by that? You could know all the algorithm in the world, you could know all the patterns, you could know all the data structures, but that does not guarantee you an interview in the first place. You need a very good resume. I don't know, Cycle might hold a workshop on resume building. But I'm just saying that so that, because I've seen a lot of people that jump into DSA because they want to get into big tech, get into Google, get into Goldman Sachs, and they just jump into learning how to code, learning how to solve DSA questions without having any experience, without having a proper resume that would even get an interview. So, in as much as you guys are trying to, or as we are trying to be good with coding interviews, we need to build your resume. You need to build your resume, make sure it is very nice. And even though you have few experiences, just structure it in a way that, yeah, it depicts that you are good enough for an interview. So when you now get an interview, then you can now show your skills. Yeah. So I will just list out a couple of things that I wrote out here. I'm gonna read from here. So I wrote them down. I was just trying to brainstorm, so I don't have them on my head. So I'll read them from here. Things that you should or I would say a working pattern for coding interview, right? Because I've established why we do coding interviews and what they want to check for. So this is just like a working pattern. So when you get into an interview setting and they do the usual introduction and get into the problem, what I'll be saying now is a possible pattern. I'm not saying this would always work, but I've seen this work for me, right? So Interview is going to start with the interviewer reading the question to you. Now, what you want to do after that? Now, what you want to do after that? Yes, is to clarify the question by repeating it to the interviewer back. Do you understand? Now, after you've repeated the question to the interviewer, you also want to ask what's it called? Constraint, because for some problems or for interviews generally, your interviewer would not give you the constraints beforehand. You have to ask. And why is it like that? That is because in your day-to-day job too, when stakeholders come and bring up a problem or a project, in most cases, the stakeholders don't give you all the information you need. It is up to you to now ask for more information to clarify, okay, what is the deadline for this? What kind of input are we expecting? So that is by the way. So like I was saying, clarify the question by repeating the question to the interviewer. Then you also want to ask questions around edge cases and constraints. Could the input be empty? For our input, is there a maximum length? Are we looking towards an alphanumeric or alphabetic input, or is it a string? Now, in as much as I would say that you should, I'm looking at my time, I think I have 2 minutes. In as much as I would say that you should repeat question, you want to try as much as possible. Ready to you, Oshe. Yeah, Shade has the stuff I wrote down already, so she's gonna forward to you guys. So, like I was saying, in as much as you want to read the question again to the interviewer, you want to try your possible best to understand the question from the first reading from the interviewer. Well, why am I saying this? When you're reading back, you're not reading back because you want to read back. You're reading back because you want to buy yourself some time to think on the background. So while he or she reads the question, you try to understand. I'm not saying too much, but try to understand from the first go. Then while reading the question back to the interviewer, you are thinking already of a possible solution, even if it's not optimal, but you're trying to brainstorm on a possible idea already, so that when you're done with the question and you're done with asking clarified questions, you have something to say immediately. That's the point. So that's just an advice, but it doesn't happen like that all the time. So after you've clarified the question, I'm just going to rush through this. You want to brainstorm. Okay, what did I write here? Yeah, I said that already. So now, for solving the problem, before you jump into the coding, you have to explain your thought process. Now, they're not asking you to, the format. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. Moses, well, it depends. I would say it depends. But for me, what I've seen so far is you will join a platform, like a shared coding platform, and then sometimes they paste the question there. Like your typical lit code question. I'm sure, do you know what lit code is? But you can check that out later. But like a typical, very good, Moses. So like a typical lit code question. So they sometimes paste it down, copy it and paste it in the board, and then they would not read it. In that case, they might ask you to read it, or you might have to read it yourself. And sometimes they read it, or they read out the question, then show you the examples, then the flow continues from there. I don't know if that answers the question. Moses. Now, where was I? I was talking about, yeah. So after reading and clarifying the question, this is where the interview starts. You want to solve the problem, right? Now, it's not always your one way to the answer, believe me. You have to. Now, they would assume in most cases that you've not seen the question before. If you are lucky, you've seen the question, good for you. But I might talk about that if you have time, maybe at the end of the mock interview we're doing. So maybe someone can remind me to talk about the case of you seeing the question before, because it's very tricky and you can mess up the interview because of that. So Adeyemo, can you just like remind me to talk about that? So maybe after the call, if we still have time. So in most cases, they would assume that you have not seen the question before. So you have to think of the solution from ground up. Yeah, from ground up. But there's a time constraint, believe me. You've got like a 1 hour interview and you've got just like 30, 35, 40 minutes. let's say 30 minutes to be on the safe side. So think of a solution that would work. Now, as a pattern wise, you first of all want to think of the first principle approach. Basically, what would work for this? No matter how spaghetti looks like, no matter how unoptimized it is, as far as it works, it's fine. As a first approach. Now, it is very important. Now, this comes with practice. I must say it's not as easy as I'm saying it sometimes. Even I get stuck doing this. But from practice, from excessive practice, you might get better, hopefully. So I was saying, once you are saying, now coming up with a brute force means the first one that works no matter how bad, even though it's very bad in terms of runtime or such. As far as it works, that's fine. So coming up with brute force is good in the sense that while to think of brute force will take time, but while saying what your brute force idea is, you are thinking already of a possible optimization. Since you know that it's not brute force, so then you go ahead and say, I think we've got a question. I think we will take questions after the interview. So I have to rush now. I think I'm running out of time. So so like I said, communicate your thought process by starting from a first principle approach that works. You might not code it, or it is advisable not to write the code for the brute force, except the interviewer confirms or gives you a go ahead to. But in most cases, you don't want to. At least if you know that you can do something better at that spot. So that is for that. So communicate your thought process. See that again. Let me see what else I have. Now, during this process, this is where your knowledge of DSA would shine, your knowledge of linked list, graphs, whatever. This is where they would come into play, and your skill of connecting the dots. So you can know all these data structures, but at the spot you have to connect the dots and see how they can work together to solve the question that you were given. And yes, you give a brute force, optimize if possible, write the code. Now, after writing the code, it is very important that you do a dry run. So you go through what you've written again by yourself or with the interviewer. Yeah, with the interviewer, that takes me back to collaboration. Ademo, I think I have like 1 minute more, just to be sure. To
No, you can
round
still
up.
go on for like 5 more minutes.
Oh, okay. Thank God. You guys hear me think Ademo. So I was thinking of 1 minute before, but 5 minutes is fine. So let me go back to where I stopped exactly. Yeah. All right, guys, give me a second. Okay. After you've so I'll go back a bit second talking about that. After you've talked about your brute force and you've possibly optimized a bit, not so much, and you write the code. And of course, before you write the code, the interviewer would clarify if what you said makes sense. Like if it works, don't mind my use of word. And this is where collaboration comes in because you don't want to go into the interview and just start talking blah blah blah. I'll do this, blah 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 blah, and you start coding. No, bro. Even if you write the perfect, like the best solution, you might still get a zero, like not zero like over 10, but like you might get a no as an answer because there was no communication, there was no collaboration. So this is me just trying to reemphasize on what I mentioned before about collaboration, problem solving, and communication. These three things needs to you need to follow them throughout the interview or throughout that 1 hour interview process. So yep, yeah. So after your interviewer has verified that yes, I think this can work, he or she would ask you to write the code, and then you write the code. Now, in some cases, they would test your code. For me, it wasn't tested, but it made sense by looking at it because it did. So before they test the code or before the interviewer reviews the code, please try as much as possible to do one last dry run with the interviewer. So you could test something like so hello, whatever the person's name is. I would like to do one more check of the code to ensure that it aligns with my initial approach. So you now start saying what the code is doing in each line. That way, you can ensure that what you've written is not spag I believe you know what SPAG means. So for those that don't know what SPAG means, SPAG in context here is just saying is not wrong, right? Wrong. I think that's a fair word to say. So to be sure that what you've written is not wrong, and you did not make syntax error. Now they might not judge you for syntax errors, but you still want to avoid that. You might remove from your points, and I don't know what happens, but you want to avoid that. So doing one last dry run would be very, very important. So let me see what I have not said. Blah blah blah. Okay, yep, I said that already. Now I also wrote something down that in most cases, when you solve the question correctly before the end of the interview time or before the end of the allocated time for the interview in that space of 1 hour, they would ask you a follow-up question. They would ask you a follow-up question. Now, this is to be sure that in a real setting, in a day-to-day work, and now that's my emphasis really, a day-to-day work is really what they're checking. Sometimes clients bring, project proposal and they give the team, engineering team, for example, it could be any team, and they work on the project and then they're done. And then the client can come and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I think we need to optimize on this. I think we need to find a better way to do this. But why didn't you tell me? Like, why didn't you tell me that in the beginning?" But yeah, that happens a lot. So because of that, they also want to ensure that even if you solve the problem, you can still think or brainstorm a possible extension or optimization, given a follow-up question on the same problem. So follow-up could be like could be saying could be that if excuse me, this is called in 15 minutes. I'm getting ADMO, I'm getting a notification that the call ends in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think we will just like join back immediately it ends.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So you guys just take note, please. We'll join back once a hint. So what was I saying? Oh my god. Can someone remind me what I was saying? I think I lost it a bit. Anybody? Anybody? Okay, I have to go it on myself. So yep, I was saying, oh, no one is gonna help me now. You guys,
Additional, like they can ask like a follow-up question.
yeah, thank you very much. So I was saying that they can ask you a follow-up question to see how you would improve on the problem or how the possible extension. Now, the kind of follow-up questions would be, I cannot say exactly, but something like, given that the input changes, what would change in your code? Or given that we expect more input, what would change in your code? Or given that the type of input we are taking now is no longer allowed, what would change? So things like that. So of course that comes to your practice. And yes, let me see if yeah. So I think one more thing, and I think we are done for that aspect. So throughout the brainstorming and writing of code, you need to ensure you are communicating. That's very important. You need to make sure you're communicating. Don't talk to yourself. Really, what I did, or what I do sometimes is I use the word we. So I could want to say something like, I would do this. I won't say hi. I'll say, what I'll say is we would. I think we should try this. I don't know if that's the best thing to say, but I think for me that makes it look like I'm making them involved because you want to make your interviewer involved. Even though they would not give you the answer to the question, they might give you hints. But if there is no flow of communication and there's no flow of collaboration, you might not even catch the hints they're giving you, and they might feel left out. And of course, you might get the problem correctly. Very beautiful. And then you see a message saying, "Thank you, Mr. Kinney, we or Mr. or Mrs. whatever, we are sorry, blah blah blah." And you're like, I solved the question, it was correct. Why are you thanking me for a rejection? I mean, so I think that is what I can say. If I missed anything, I think Shadi is gonna share this to you guys some other time. Oh, maybe after you call. I don't know. So in case I missed anything, you can just check there. I didn't write so much, believe me. So don't expect a lot of things from there. So yep, that is it. So I think Mademo, we are supposed to move into the mock interview now. Am I correct?
Yes, we are. Thank you so much for that session. So
No.
for the mock interview, I'm going to be inviting Shade to conduct it. So I don't know, Shade, are you there? You can just
I had to join through the second account today.
okay. Go on.
Um, Sorry about the Google Meet issue. Like, I've
No,
been
it's
trying to
fine.
subscribe to this thing since forever, and they are declining my cards. So we just have
Oh,
to proceed.
you cannot bother me. Sometime I can use my card or something.
Yeah.
Maybe later.
Okay, that's for later.
Okay.
So today I'll conduct the interview. I'll be conducting the interview, and our interviewee in this case is it interview. I'm the
Take it
interviewer
easy
in
on
this
me.
case. So basically, I'm going to be sharing the question. I'll paste it in the chat box. Or
If it's not there, don't need the else statement. But if it's not there, we want to add that should be self dot element dot add. We want to add this and return true. I'm not adding an else statement here because returning here would exit the function. So that's why I didn't put an else condition here. So for removing, I would do a similar thing. Now, if the value is not already in the set, I want to return false. But if that's not the case, then I want to remove the value from the set and return true. And for get random, like I said earlier, I would convert the set to a list before using the random method on it. I think I have to import. Now let me just import random itself. So that's a built-in library I'll be using to get a random value. But before I get it, I will do this. So in Python, you can easily convert from a set to a list by applying the list constructor on the set itself. So I'm going to do self the elements, and yep, this should work. So just a quick rundown again. I define an element variable that would contain the list of values added. So once it's time to insert, I first of all check if the value is already there. If it's there, I return false because you don't want to insert twice. Technically, a set even stores unique items, so that would never be possible. So we return false. But if that is not the case, we want to add the value to the set and return true. For removing, we want to check if the value is not in the. So if the value that we want to remove is not there, then that's not possible. So we return false. Else we remove and return true. And for the get random, I convert the set to a list, then apply this built-in Python random method to get an element and at random. And since it's a built-in library, we can guarantee that each element would have the same probability of being returned.
oh, so your solution looks good.
Okay, thank you.
Can you use a test case to dry run the solution?
Okay, so let's say, so initially, just gonna put that here. Initially, we would have an empty set. So let's call this. So let's say we try to add two. So I'll say because our now it's empty, so we get two in the set, and we return true. So let's say we try to add two to the set again. In this case, this would play out because it's already in the set. So our set still remains as two, but now return false. And so I'm just going to try to add a another number. So let's say we try to add 45. In this case, it checks our set. It sees that it's not there, so you can add it to the set. So now we have 45, and this returns true. So if we try to remove, let's say 2 or let's say 3 from this set, in this case, it checks that the value 3 is not in this set, like we can see here. So it returns false and exit the function. So our set stays the same, and we have false returned. But if it tries to remove, let's say 2, so it checks that this if condition is not fulfilled because the value now is there. So in this case, we would have 45 left and would have true. Not quite a good. Okay, I think before my gets random. So let me assume we've already added a lot of elements to the set, and we have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like I said earlier, we are guaranteed because this is a built-in library that has been tested. We are sure that if the get random is called, we will get a random number. Let's say 6. Now this just returns a random number. It does not make any change to the set or removes the value from the set. Is that fine, Shadi?
Yes, that's fine. But
All
can
right,
it
thank you very
involve
much.
any edge cases where your solution would not work as expected?
Interesting. Let's see. So a possible edge case. What if we are given, well, it's not an edge case typically because we've defined or we've clarified that we only want to take in inputs that are integers. So even though we're not giving integers, I think that would not fail because we are not checking. So if we want to insist on just integers, we have to have an extra check to verify that the element that is being taken from the input is actually an integer before we do anything. Whether adding or whether adding or removing or guessing random.
Okay. So can you add like a block of code to implement that?
Okay, and just gonna add that here. So I can add an extra helper function to check string. So I'm not exactly sure of the syntax in Python, but I think
You can utilize Google at this point because
okay. Thank you so much. Okay, I think. Okay, we've got a good one. Okay, so okay, so this is the method that would have to call every time we want to insert or remove. So I'm just gonna add that check now. So save the check string. So this would check this first before it does anything. And if I put this here, so check. So I added it as a method so that I would not have to duplicate the code here and here and here. That's why I kept it in that extra method. So we have check dot self the check string and val. So yeah.
all right. Okay. Can you discuss the runtime of your code?
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. So first of all, my constructor, all it does is to initialize an empty set. So that is constant time because no value has been added at a point. And for my insert method, the first thing it does is to check if the string is the value. I think I need to rename this, or I think it's fine. Self the chess string. Yeah. So if it checks if the value is a string, and that happens in constant time too. And so this checks if the value is in the set already. Now, because I'm using a set as my data structure, checking if an element exists in a set, removing from a set, adding to a set, this all happen in constant time. So I've got O of 1, yeah. Same thing, yeah, for adding. And we've got a similar flow here, constant time for checking if it's not there, and for removing constant time. And for getting random, okay, I am converting the set to a list first, and that is a linear time because what Python does under the hood here is to take every element in the set and one by one add them to a temporary list before applying the random method. So this is a linear time where my hen here is the number of elements in the sets at the point this was called. And like I said earlier, this is constant time also. So I would say generally each of the method have their different runtime. So this is constant time, This is a linear time O of n. This is constant time O of 1 and constant time from a constructor. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I guess we've spent a lot of time. So can you just discuss a method you would use to optimize this to like the most optimal or the most optimal possible time complexity or runtime?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So yeah, looking at it, I think so we have constant time here, but I think it's possible to optimize this. And now the way I say it is we are trying to convert from a set to a list before applying the random method, and that's the reason it takes linear time. What if we could just call what if we could have something like this? So random dot choice and self the list. It could be anything, any variable name. So let's say the element, but in this case, the element is a list and not a set. I mean, if you can do this, this would optimize to constant time, and if that would be possible, then it means that apart from just having a set, we can have an array or a list. Self dots. Let me call this L elements. So this could be an array like this. So that as we insert, so when we try to insert to the set to do the same check, we can do instance. But once we add to the set, we also want to add to the list. So I'm going to do a dry run before I write the code to be sure that we're on the same page. So we have an extra data structure, which is a list in this context. And once we add an item to the set, we add to the list also. That way, once we want to get a random element, we can just call the random method on the list itself, and that'll give us a constant time operation. But if we get to remove, so looking at this, if we check, we do our check and return false. Now, removing from a set is constant time, like I said before, but removing from a list is not always constant time. So I think that's an interesting part of the problem. So removing from a list is only constant time if the item we want to remove is at the end of the list, because a list is a contiguous memory block. So every element in the list are stored in a contiguous order. So your address would go from 1, 2, 3. So if I remove from anywhere that is not at the end of the list, then it means the array or the list has to shift positions of these elements to fill in spaces for the unused memory address. So given that condition, I think What if we could also, what if instead of us trying to remove from the list, which would lead to a poor runtime for this particular method, we can try to move the elements that we want to remove to the end of the list and move the element at the end of the list to that position. That way, we can easily remove the element from the list because now it's at the end of the list and removing now is constant time. But a possible problem would be that we need to be able to get these elements easily from the list. So we need to know what index it is before we swap them, or before we swap them. Are you still with me, Shadi?
Yes, I am. I am.
All right, thank you very much. So, like I was saying, um, we need to move position. So we need to bring the element at the end of the list. So the position of the element we want to remove from the list. That way, we can easily pop off whatever is at the end of the list because we are sure it's a constant time operation. But like I said, we will need the index to do this. We will need the index. That means that instead of me using a set here, I think I we could use a Nash map here instead. And why? That is because we also want to keep track of the index of every item in the list. So instead of me using a set, I can use a Nash map. So essentially, that would map every item in the list to the corresponding index so that I can perform my removal operation here easily since I know what the index is. So if I know what the index is, I can swap positions and then remove from the list end and also update the index of the value that I moved to that position in my hash map. Yeah, I think that is it. Um, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that is a good solution.
Okay, thank you.
Um, so I think we've come to the end of the interview. Normally they would say we'll send our feedback, or do you have any questions for me? Or you can skip that, of course.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, I'm just going to look through the chat and check if there are any questions. Um,
I think someone sent a
Somebody said,
question.
in
Yeah.
a real life interview with any of the big techs, will you be
Yep.
using an algorithm as simple as this?
Oh, definitely. That's a good question. So, yep. So you guys surprised. This looks easy. Yep. But interestingly, like Shadi asked me for a follow up and what I could do to make it better. That is the same way they would ask you. So technically, in some cases, you don't want to waste time writing this code I've written now. If you know that something can be done better, so that you don't spend the large portion of your interview coming below, so that you don't spend your a large portion of your interview writing a brute force solution when you know you still have something you can optimize to. So, but if not, there's a trick to it. If you decide to, or before I mentioned the trick, it's not really a trick, but it's a pattern. So technically, you want to explain a brute force, discuss a brute force. It's more of a discussion with the interviewer. So you discuss the solution or the approach that you're thinking of first aid, and then you guys agree if it's fine. Hussein, can you mute yourself? So you guys discuss if it's a proper idea. Then in some cases, the interviewer would ask you to write the code. Now, if he or she says that, that's fine. Write the code as fast as you can. But if they don't, they might ask you to optimize even before writing. In that case, you have to now think of a better approach. Then discuss again. Just repeat your process, and then if it's better indeed, you write the code. If there is still time, they will ask you a follow-up question. That is the ideal way. So it's either that or now I'm coming to that question now. That's what I'm going to. Now, due to the time constraints, if you know the answer, or I'll be honest, in some cases I think I've gotten lucky to an extent in some of my questions where I see questions I've done before. But my last this interview, I cannot say what the question is, but I had done the question before. But now this is the trick, or this is the part where it gets interesting. When I was asked the question in my interview, they gave a completely different description, and I forgot completely that I have solved that same question before. So it was good for me because I now have to think from ground up. I did not figure out that I've done it before until after the interview, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? I've done this before." But I mean, it was good for me because if I had remembered that I've done it before, I might have almost jumped to the solution quickly, or to the best solution quickly. And why is that not? Why is that not advisable? It's advisable that you don't mention the optimal solution first. At least, even though you know it, still mention. You might not code it up, but still mention a brute force way, like a way that you know would work, but is not optimized. Still try as much as possible to mention it. Then say why you think it's not good enough. Then once you've established why you think it's not good enough, or if they ask you, then come up with your new one. That's the I'm tempted to use the word OT, but just because you're on this call, that is the what's the word? Someone should give me the word. That's the pattern. Yeah, that's the trick. But yeah, really, that's the trick. Even there's a lot of times you will know the question if you've practiced a lot. Practice a lot. If you practice a lot, we have somebody unmuted. But don't be tempted to just jump to it, because if you jump, so imagine now, this is how it works. Imagine you have, let me hurry up. Imagine you have like 30 minutes for an interview, and in the first 10 minutes, you've wowed yourself, because really it's yourself you're wowing. You've wowed yourself, giving the best, what's it called, solution. We have 20 minutes. What do we do with that time? 20 minutes left to do what? That is the part where they will now ask you follow-up question that you'd have avoided if you are just coming to platform. Okay, I think I will come to the question one by one. So you can avoid that by discussing the brute force, then saying why it is not good enough, then discussing the optimal one. Before you know it, 25 minutes has gone. So even if they ask follow-up question, it's not like to be like one. But imagine you use 10 minutes to solve and you list code. And you think you're very good, and you want to just show that yes, you're very good. So 20 minutes is enough to have a lot of what's it called? A lot of follow-up questions that eventually you might not be able to solve, and eventually would lead to rejection. Now, I would say this. I heard this. Now, I would say this. I heard this directly from. Can I say? Yeah, I can say it because it was said in public. So it was a Bloomberg call that is to hold every Monday for prospective candidates that want to apply. I think I might probably look for the link and share to Sade so you guys can have access to it somehow. So Adeyemo, just maybe remind me to look for the link and share. So I remember that there was a Monday call, a usual Monday, and in the call, the recruiter said that if she has two candidates that she's interviewing, now if one of them comes up with the best solution right up of your head, that's beautiful, that's good, amazing. And then the other one discusses the brute force approach, like the first principle approach, what would work. Because imagine in some cases, that your first thought might end up being the best thought. So you don't want to think too much of the best thought from the scratch, because sometimes you have a problem in your work, and at that point you're thinking of how do we get this to completion under 2-3 days. You don't want to think too much of optimization at that point yet. So she said, and I quote, that in those two candidates, even though this one was able to bring up the best idea in a very short time, and this other guy was able to come up with a brute force first, then a possible optimization, because you want to optimize too. She would pick the other person over this person. So I think that was a very clear response there. Please mention brute force as much as you can. Sometimes it's not easy, believe me. That is where your practice shines. So I would not sound like this, all these things I'm saying are like super easy to do. No, it's not easy. You have to practice extensively. So I think that answers the question of Joy Osai, the first question she asked. Then, what platform do I use for practice? So I don't practice much again, but I try to sometimes. But I use Leads Code. Leads Code is your go-to guy. You can use Zakarang too, but I would prefer leads code. I mean, HackerRank too is good because essentially some of the before you get interview, some companies send you a HackerRank link. So doing HackerRank beforehand might help. So leads code, HackerRank is good, but leads code preferably over Sabib failed to rejection. Yeah, brother, it can. I've seen it happens. I've seen this thing happen. No, let's never go there. So do I have subscriptions to have access to big tech companies? No, I don't. In 2022, I got a list of Bloomberg questions or possible questions that have been hacked. Now, I cannot say exactly this is what they will hack or this is what they will ask you. That's not in my power to say. But I got a list back then from, I think I got it online. Just search on Google, possible Google questions for interview, possible meta questions, possible. Basically, you have to work with what you have. If you have the money, why not spend the money? And I mean, it's for the greater good. But not everyone has that money to pay. Just look up online for past interviews or possible questions that they normally ask. So people get these things from List Code Premium, and then they can now make it available to people that don't have the financial capability to get that. So I think that answers the question of me having subscriptions to you having to have subscriptions to access big tech questions. You can access big tech questions without subscription, but with subscription, you get more accurate question. That I would say. So really, if you have friends, at some points, I was begging my friends, after I beg, do you have Let's Code Premium? I beg. You have to go and meet people. Or that's why having a network like this is good, because from here we can meet ourselves and be like, okay, bro, please, do you have this? I beg, if you have, don't share me login. I promise you, I won't give anybody. These are things you have to do to get yourself what you need. So I think that's all the question that I have. What was my timeline for the interview? So when I applied in 2022, the interview lasted for about 2 months, but that was because that was my first time, that was like my first period doing interviews. So I was spacing the interviews intentionally. So after each of them, I would give like a space of 2 weeks before I did the next one. But when I applied last year, October, I did my interview I did 3 interviews in one day. And then I did the final one on a Monday, and I got my offer on Thursday. So it took like 2 weeks last year. So yeah, the question of does Bloomberg do the usual follow-up interview? What's follow-up? Do you mean 4 stages? So I can't be Bloomberg specific because I mean we've got a lot of companies, but so depending on the company, you have to research but for Bloomberg, 5 rounds of interview. I mean, that's a publicly available information. 5 rounds of interview. You've got the DSA, then you've got system design, and then you've got HR, and then you've got engineer manager. Now, this is what I'm saying. You can. Oh yeah, it's a lot. You want to work in big tech, you have to pay the big price here. But you can check these things online, really. So just check. It's available on the site. Check for what interview is like. So I heard most Bloomberg questions are based on system design. Is that true, or is just some? Like I would say, anything that I would say regarding Bloomberg is what you can get on Google, because I don't want to give false information. But to an extent, I mean, it depends on your interview, really. It depends on the question you get. You can get a question that is like a design question, and that works, but it's still testing your algorithmic skill, whichever way. So yeah, but yeah, I don't think it's all the time you get a STEM question. I mean, it depends. I don't know. You can get a simple question. Yeah, no, that's the thing. There's a lot of luck in this whole thing. You can be lucky and get an extremely simple question. Like somebody asked me, would we get this simple question? You might get it, and it's never on your mind. You can get it simple. This simple question that is just very basic. Explain your idea, optimize, pass the interview, go to the next stage, do your thing again, and offer is in your mail. So yeah, it depends really on the interviewer and luck and your practice. So like in Amazon and Google, they usually have 4 interview round in one day. Yeah. I think you do I think in Microsoft too, you do one, Then you do 3 rounds. I'm not sure really. You have to just check the company and see. The interview structure are usually available on the public because, of course, the candidate has to know what they are expecting before they jump on the interview. So I think that's all the questions we have. I think I got one more question now. How were you able to cope and discipline yourself? Yeah, that's a very good question. How do I explain this? So for me, so I would say that I would not say this is luck because I started DSA during the 8 month strike. Right at that point, so I was doing backend, I was doing backend, so I was trying to learn them simultaneously because I didn't want to wait till I was extremely good with backend before I started DSA. So I started DSA at the same time with backend, almost at the same time technically, even though it was slow. But in terms of coping and disciplining yourself, I mean, you have to focus on what you want to get. I mean, you want to get this offer. That's enough motivation, if you ask me. Because believe me, DSA is not exactly interesting to practice, even till now. But you know why you're doing it. And now, what I would say is, in as much as we want to do the DSA and how to get the offer, it can be fun. It can be fun, really. And that's another angle to say because in the process, you are developing your problem solving skill. And even though you wouldn't do this code in your day-to-day work in any company you join, the problem solving skill you've gathered during your practice for the interview would play out in your day to day, even though it may not be obvious because you may solving this code. But then unconsciously, it can possibly play out that yes, you are better problem solving. Why? Because you practice a lot of algorithmic questions. So I don't need that. So for the part of this discipline myself, I think I've touched on already. Depending on your, basically for me, I had to shut down distractions, a lot of distractions. I think I was off Twitter for like that period. Now I'm on Twitter now sometimes, even though I'm going off again to focus on myself. So you have to shut down distractions really, because I mean we are students. I want to believe most of us here are students really, and if not all of us, most of us. So combining that with school can be very challenging. But if you manage your time, your 24 hours productively, I think you'll be fine. How many questions or 7 per day? I think maybe like five questions per day, and not just 7 questions. Learning, watching videos, watching this code. Yeah, depends. Sometimes 2 questions. Sometimes I try a question in 1 hour. I don't know it. I give up. Check the answer. Learn from there. On to the next. So that was how the pattern was for me. And I think consistency, yes. Basically, find a pattern that works for you. If you want to do 1 hour per day, do 1 hour per day and stick to it. This is very important, guys. If you do 1 hour per day for list code or whatever, trying to learn it, and let's say you do 3 hours in one day, and then the next day you don't do it, the next day you don't do it, next day you don't do it, and you now come back after 3 days to do it, I don't know, that would not work. Believe me. You like spend 10 hours in one day and like after 10 days. But if you find a pattern that works, that would work even if it's 1 hour, even if it's 30 minutes, you can do conveniently. And conveniently means that you don't have the bandwidth to go more, because if you have the bandwidth to go more, please go more. If it not affect whatever you're doing on the other side. So find a pattern, find a time that works and stick to it consistently. So for Abdurrahman question, are any of the company's programming language specific? Never. Oh, wait, let me think about it. In some cases, I think Google for Google, you can only use C++, Python. I'm not sure. Some companies would give you a list of languages you can use for the interviews in the job description. But for most companies, never. Even for this company, Citadel, that uses OCaml as their major language throughout, like almost for the engineering team. I was watching the video on the interview preparation, and they mentioned clearly that even though they use OCaml day to day, they don't expect you to have any knowledge of OCaml during the interview, and you're fine using any other language that you want to use. So I think that answers the question. So no companies will give you options. What having to use one language? Nah, I don't think so. Yeah, doing in group is beautiful. Like Mosi said, like the same way we're doing mock interview now, you want to basically you have to have friends. I had a lot of friends that we did this together really, and that was helpful too because there are times 15 minutes call. Oh, let me hurry up. So there are times you get tired, and it's your friends that would. I mean, I have a lot of friends in this. We have a group. I've formed different groups for the SSA just to ginger ourselves and up ourselves stand when we fall. Because it's not an easy grind. I must be honest. Like how many questions I saw per day? I think I already answered that question. Did I use NIST code? I overused NIST code safe. So really, NIST code Ohio. Let me drop that here. I was going to mention that before, but since you asked me, so for those that don't know what NIST code is, so you can learn, you can solve questions with NIST code. Beautiful. But NIST code Ohio or NIST code on his YouTube page, he has solutions to a lot of questions, and he explains them very well. I think he gives the best explanation I've found on YouTube so far. It explains very well. Now, I'm not saying you should just go and start watching the solutions. Try. So basically, you want to solidify your fundamentals first. You need to know how your linked list work, how graph works, how BFS works, how DP works, how stack and queues work, how heaps work, different patterns, sliding window, K-match. You need to have the understanding of these things first. Now, understanding would come from you reading of theory-based text, maybe from a textbook. I'm a fan of books, actually. So I used books. I think I used books. Well, I can't remember the exact one I used. Maybe I would find them and send I remember these things. But yeah, you have to use a book or videos to understand how these things work first. Then after you've understood how it works, then you solve a question on it. Then you give yourself a time frame, 30, 45 minutes. If you don't get it, I think it's fine that you just check the answer. Or check if this code has a solution to it, because if it does, believe me, it's going to explain very well. And once you watch this video, now I'm not trying to promote NIST code here, please. You can watch any other one you find interesting. So once you watch the video or you read up a solution, try to pick out not just the solution, but the pattern. Try to see beyond the code. Try to see beyond what the person wrote. Try to understand the person's thought process. So when I try to read up people's solution, I don't just memorize the code and no, that's wrong. Understand how we thought of every line, and hopefully that should guide you when solving other questions. So I think the answers. I think I already answered Anthony's question. A really good book is Common Sense Guide. Yeah, beautiful. I don't know the book, but if he says it's good, I believe him. So maybe Shade, like Sicon, could compile a list of resources and a list of all these things we'll be saying since and forward it as a mail. I don't know, but I think you guys should. I trust they would do that because we can keep saying these things now and still miss out on them. So we'll try and get a compiled list, maybe of books or videos that we can find together and send to you guys. Hopefully that should help you guys. But really, the ball is in your court. I must say the ball is in your court. You can have all the books out in the world, you can have all the YouTube videos in the world and still not be good. So you have to really, really put your head down. Because trust me, when you get the offer, you would realize that the offer is even way more than whatever you've done as an MP. Because I used to think that okay, I was so much invested in this thing. But when I got the offer, and I think back, I still don't think what I did was enough to get the offer. Like it's not matching really. So it's a really beautiful opportunity, I must be honest. So just do what you have to do. Learn, be consistent, be disciplined, and try as much as possible to not pressure yourself. Yeah, don't because somebody got enough in your caucus and your class, and then you now put it on your head that oh God, what's doing me? Is my people from village or whatever? You not start grinding back to back. No. Take it easy, but still put effort because I will not advise you to be, lazy or something. Take it easy on yourself and enjoy the process. It is very fun. it is fun. And be open to whatever happens. I mean, pray that it goes well, but be open to, you know, every rejection for me was an opportunity to get better and better before I got the offer. And now I'm still not even like, relaxed. I still have to practice some other time. But yeah, I don't know if that helps. So do I have any DSA group? Probably to challenge and help us. We could form one from this core. I have one, but it's like a big internal. So Sicon, yeah, beautiful. Sicon will create a group, and hopefully, if I get added to the group, we can discuss more because we cannot see everything on the core really. There are things I should have said, but I might have probably forgotten. So I think that is it. So I think no other questions. Shade, over to you. Let me stop sharing my screen. Stop
All right,
presenting.
so that's the end of the mock interview. Shay, please you can take over.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dami. Thank you so much, Shade, for hosting the mock interview. Up next is going to be our closing remarks, and I'm going to call on Kowiyu Adelaja, our chairman of SciCon, to give us the closing remarks.
Hi everyone. I think I think to start with, to make more sense, to thank Mr. Damola Kuye for the beautiful
Mm,
session. And like, it was so cool. Like, trust me, I think he gave you guys everything that he had. Like he put all he had into like the session. Thank you so much, Dami. And also again, I would like to like thank the Cycon team, particularly starting from Shadi, Shoyi, Oma. We've been receiving mails. Thank you, like Oma, for sending those mails. And thank you, Shadi, for coordinating the show. Like, so, if you think 10x, I just think Shadi actually. It's very
yeah.
honest. They've made the process, they've made the process so seamless for me, actually. And I think they've done like a beautiful job so far. 3 webinars and back to back, they've been giving you guys it. So it's not easy to get.
hmm
So thank you
Yeah.
so much, Shadi and Akin. Then most importantly too, there is no cycle without the people that attend the webinar, right?
Yeah.
So thank you so much to the, I don't know, 30 something people that attended like those sessions and people that have been attending our sessions from day one. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Um in respect to that, now just like I'll just address one thing that I've noticed so far. It has been like something that I've been sharing with like juniors like lately now. Uh I think one thing that people struggle with is like hobbies and career, right? I
hmm
just want to touch on this thing. I don't know why. Like, so as early as possible, it's very nice if you know the career that you want to go
mm
into before you leave school. Like,
Yeah.
I'm saying this because of like things I've seen as like a final year student and
hmm
people not knowing like what they want to do after school. So if you can, you would have multiple hobbies, but just know which of that your hobby you want to choose as a career. And in the
Yeah.
software, just so that you can start grinding, like the
Yeah. You
experience,
can streamline
the
your
amount
efforts.
of
Yeah.
years of exactly it counts. So you don't want to be after school, starting you want to now start grinding. The community will not be there again. You get,
hmm
so you want to carry all this thing on from while you are in school. You get, so what I want to say is like don't be caught on trying to chasing like a lot of things. Choose one thing
I think your speaker is breaking.
oh, that's what I
Yeah.
do.
Continue again.
Okay. So that,
Okay,
in
it's
essence,
good.
what I'm just trying to say is, if you are still in your year one, your year two, year one, you can relax. Like your year two, your year three, try as much as possible to figure out what you want to do as a career. You can have other things as your hobbies, like it's fine. You get and for your career, you will need a mentor as early as possible. Try to get a mentor and grind. So that by the time you're leaving in year five, you can be like 3 and the rest. So I think that would be like my closing remark. Once again, thank you so much, everyone. for attending the webinar. Thank you so much, Adi.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gary. And thank you so
Yeah.
much, Promise, the man in charge of Uber.
Thank you. Thank
That will
you.
be all for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, back to you.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining this episode of Sicon.contact Club. We hope to see you in our next episode. And we're going to be sending you emails on all the information you need from this session. So watch out for your mails. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dami. Thank you, Kobe. Thank you, Shadi. Thank you, everybody. Bye. Till
All
next
right. Bye, everyone. Yep.